with the message.
Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Three of Meher Baba's favorite couplets of Hafiz, a mystical Persian poet. Befitting a fortunate slave, carry out every command of the master without any question of why and what. About what you hear from the master, never say it is wrong, because, my dear, the fault lies in your own incapacity to understand him. I am slave of the master who has released me from ignorance. Whatever my master does is of the highest benefit to all concerned. Hafiz, Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Thank you, Karthik.
Thank you so much. So, oops, wrong file closed. Okay, so we stopped at the end of chapter 8 in the gift of God, and we continue from there on to chapter 9. Um, Ashok, you want to read for some more time?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Chapter 9. The service that the disciple can offer the master is not only linked with the universal cause of humanity, but is one of the most potent means of bringing the disciple nearer his spiritual goal. Meher Baba. After my first visions of married life with Nariman, others followed. In one, Baba told me, "You will have to undergo much suffering." I tried to imagine what could be worse than the struggle I had already been going through. When I asked him if the vision, when I asked him in the vision if it were death, Baba replied, "Yes, you will have to face many deaths in your life." In August of 1944, a year after my brother Tempton's death, just when we were beginning to become accustomed to his absence, the family suffered another irreparable loss. Uncle Chanji, whose loving nature made everyone cherish him, died suddenly while on a trip with Baba. We all felt cast adrift. Chanji was the captain of our ship, and he had lovingly steered us into Baba's harbor. Can we have a look at the photograph? Once? Yeah.
Dadachanji.
Yes. They're all very fortunate people here serving Baba.
Yeah, indeed, indeed.
A man of medium stature, Chanji wore round spectacles typical of his times, and when he made jokes, he always twirled his mustache. Smiling, eyes twinkling, he would tell stories with a spontaneous wit that filled Baba and the rest of us with laughter. Chanji was quiet, absent minded, often searching for his glasses when they were sitting on top of his head, or leaving his briefcase behind and then rushing back to our house to retrieve it before catching a train. But if he was forgetful with his personal belongings, where Baba's work was concerned, he was very particular about even the smallest details. Chanji's temperament was unique. He was extroverted, good hearted, kind, and trusting. His deep understanding of human nature gave him the ability to bring solace to those in despair by sharing Baba's message of love. His own gratitude, conviction, and intense love for Baba inspired others without his ever forcing Baba upon them. We always looked upon, we always looked forward to Chanji's visits because Being with him was such a joy. He could make us laugh until we hurt. The best of all, though, he always brought beloved Baba's atmosphere with him. I loved Uncle Chanji more than I loved my father, and I found his death almost unbearable. Although Chanji's dying came as a complete shock, we realized later that Baba had given several indications that he would not be with us much longer. In May of that year, while discussing plans for a darshan program in Nagpur in September, Baba had named quite a number of men mandali who would go with him. To everyone's surprise, he did not mention Uncle Chanji, who accompanied him practically everywhere. When someone asked why, when someone asked Baba why he had not included Chanji, Baba replied, "He will come if he is alive." Most of the Mandali took Baba's remark to be humorous, but Dr. Nilu later told us that Baba's words had made him uncomfortable and he wondered about their meaning. A short time later, Baba sent Chanji to Bombay saying, "When I send for you, bring all your belongings because you will not be going back to Bombay for a very, very long time." Chanji was with us for a few days and we spent our time talking to Baba as we always did. But on this visit, he wasn't joking with us in his usual manner. The day he was preparing to leave Bombay, we were alone in the house. Uncle Chanji said, "Arnawaz, I am not coming back for a long time." Sometimes we wouldn't see him for long periods, months at a time. So I asked if he meant 5 or 6 months. Uncle Chanji said, "No, no, no, a very long time." I suggested, "Then maybe after a year or two." He repeated, "No, a very long time." There was a sadness in his voice that I didn't understand. I went to see him off at the station, but I didn't go to the platform as he had Baba's order not to reveal to anyone where he was going. After he embraced me just before he left for the train, he removed a 5 rupee note from his pocket and gave it to me. Uncle Chanji never had any money of his own, and this was a very unusual gesture. I asked, "Why are you giving this to me?" "I should be giving it to you," he answered. "You keep it." I took the money because I could feel that he was giving it lovingly with a purpose. That was the last time I saw him. Later, I realized that he knew in his heart he would never see me or the rest of the family again, and perhaps he even had an intuition that he was going to die. We later came to know that when Chanji left Bombay, he met Baba in Raipur, where he fell ill, and he never fully regained his strength. Then in August, when Baba took the group to Srinagar, Kashmir, Chanji contracted typhoid fever. He was His condition was so serious that he had to be moved to a hospital where Baba visited him often during the next few days. Chanji died on 25th August 1944. Baba sent a telegram to me. Oh, sorry. Baba sent a telegram to one of his mandali in Ahmednagar, Adi K. Irani Senior, telling him to inform us. However, he was not to mention where Chanji's death had taken place. When we heard the news, we didn't want to believe it. We wondered if perhaps Baba had sent Chanji somewhere and did not want him ever to return. Of course, all of us was just hoping on our part. Chanji was only 52 years old. He was generally healthy, and we had known nothing about his illness. It was not until a week after his death that Baba wrote to Adi, allowing him to visit us personally and relate the whole story. When Nariman heard that Uncle Chanji had died, he grew pale and his sorrow was obvious. These two men, both so important in my life, had a very close and deep connection, and Uncle Chanji had been delighted at the news that Nariman and I were to be married. Uncle Chanji loved all of us very much, but especially Nariman, whom he had adopted in his heart as his own son. He knew Nariman's true worth, and from the very beginning of their relationship, he had talked to Nariman about Baba, gradually drawing him closer and closer, knowing that one day his nephew would be completely Baba's. And he was right. Nariman's love for and faith in Baba grew until it was total and spontaneous. His response to anything Baba asked of him was simply to say, "Yes, Baba," and carry out the order. Nariman always responded from his heart. He never let his mind get in the way of serving his beloved Lord. Anybody has any comments? Karthik?
No, no, please continue.
Uncle Chanji was so fond of Nariman that I used to tease him, saying that he would inherit all of Chanji's possessions. Of course, Uncle Chanji had nothing to leave to anyone materially, not even his bedding and clothes. Those did not belong to him, as they were given by Baba, along with enough money to cover the bare necessities of life. After settling in Bombay, Nariman, out of his deep love for Baba and his uncle, had helped take care of Uncle Chanji's material needs. Although I had merely been joking about Nariman inheriting everything belonging to Uncle Chanji, in a sense he did. Baba's gesture for Chanji had been to indicate spectacles. When he began using the same gesture for Nariman, I witnessed Nariman's connection with Baba deepening. Baba knows what is best for each one of us, and Chanji's dropping of the body was in accord with his perfect timing. Nevertheless, Chanji's death sent a wave of shock and grief over the entire Baba community in both the East and West. For years, he had been Baba's chief personal secretary and primary correspondent with Baba lovers in both India and abroad, writing or visiting them whenever he could, no matter how busy he was. In this way, he served as a link to Baba for many, many people. Through love, tenderness, and concern, he won the hearts of all who came in contact with him. He was a true friend, and his death was a great loss for many. When one of the Mandali asked Baba why Chanji, who was so indispensable to him, had to die, Baba replied, "I saved him twice. The first time he wanted to commit suicide on the beach in Bombay, and the second time he almost drowned in the Toka River. This second incident had occurred in 1928 when Baba moved his ashram temporarily to Toka. One day, while Chanji was sitting on the bank of the river, he slipped and fell into the water. Not knowing how to swim, he sank, then struggled 3 times to surface. The third time, feeling it was surely the end, he shouted at the top of his voice, "Baba, Baba." Then he felt as though a hand came underneath him and lifted him above the surface of the water. But actually, one of the other Mandali pulled him out of the river. Uncle Chanji later told us that as he was falling into the river, he knew he was going to drown. In the water, he had experienced death, but Baba had saved him. Everyone in our family was very impressed when Chanji narrated this incident, especially his mother, my grandmother, who used to worry about who would look after him in his old age. After his divorce, she had wanted him to remarry. He would tell grandmother to stop worrying about him, but she did not understand that he had dedicated his life to Baba. Finally, she decided to have his horoscope read to learn whether or not his destiny included another marriage. She went with one of my aunts to an astrologer who, after studying Chanji's chart for a few minutes, threw it down and said, "This is the horoscope of a dead man." My grandmother was shocked. "Dead man? But this is my son and he is alive." The astrologer said, "But there is no life. What can I read? He is dead. I'm telling you, this is the horoscope of a dead man. Completely perplexed, m- my grandmother was certain the astrologer was making a mistake. Then when Uncle Chandi told us about nearly drowning, he impressed upon the family that it were not for Baba, he would have died. After that, my grandmother was convinced that the horoscope had been read correctly. If Baba were not the great man that Chanji insisted he was, her beloved son would be a dead man indeed. From then on, not only did my grandmother stop pestering Chanji to remarry, but her faith in Baba grew stronger.
Wow, that's interesting.
Absolutely. And there is a way in which Baba, you know, conveys his love and brings people to closer to him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, he's uh, on top of literally everything that's going on, but we don't realize it.
Absolutely. We don't understand what's happening is. Continuing. Chanji accompanied Baba on every trip he took to the West before his death. In obeying Baba's every order, he was subject to trying situations that Baba deemed necessary for his spiritual training. On one voyage, Baba told Chanji to ask the captain why the ship was moving so slowly. The captain just gave him a funny look. The next day, Baba sent Chanji back to ask what day the ship would arrive at its destination. A day or two later, Baba sent him to ask what time of the day the ship would arrive. Finally, he instructed Chanji to ask the captain why he couldn't make the ship go faster. Chanji was sure that when he approached the captain with that question, the captain would hit him with whatever he would find available and throw him into the ocean. But the captain just stared at him as though he were crazy. Another time, Baba had Chanji repeatedly protest to the steward of the ship that the food had either too much or too little salt, until the exasperated steward threw out courtesy to the winds and unleashed such abuse to Chanji that it made him wish a wave would sweep into the ocean. Mhm.
Sweep him into the ocean.
Sorry, sweep him into the ocean. Yes. Thanks for correcting.
Yeah, that.
Baba was relentless with his training of those closest to him. On another occasion, Baba and Chanji were in cabin alone discussing a letter that Chanji was to draft. No matter what Baba said, Chanji argued, insisting that the letter should be written a different way. Chanji had Baba's foot in his lap and was tying his shoelaces. Baba had finally became so angry with Chanji's stubbornness that he pushed Chanji with his foot, sending my uncle sprawling to the floor and then gave him a slap for being so obstinate. Chanji broke down and cried. At that moment, the door of the cabin opened and in walked a Western woman disciple who was accompanying him on the trip. Baba beamed and pointing toward Chanji gestured. He's crying because his love for me has overwhelmed him. Uncle Chanji did not spare himself in any way in his life with Baba. He made good use of every available moment. Despite the fact that he had little free time when they traveled, a portable typewriter always accompanied him. He pounded the keys wherever he was, even on trains, and he often worked late into the night attending to the voluminous correspondence he was expected to take care of. After he died, we were surprised to find that Chanji had also faithfully kept beautiful, detailed diaries of Baba's work, activities, and work. His epitaph given by Baba is as follows: Framrose H. Dadachanji, born on 23rd November 1893, died on 25th August 1944. An ardent and very close disciple of Sri Meher Baba of Ahmednagar, he spent 20 years of his life as a personal secretary in the devoted service of Baba. He strove to alleviate the suffering of all with whom he came in contact and specially exerted his at most bringing the Parsi community to the pedestal of the true understanding through the contact and grace of Baba. For time to come, he leaves a vast record of events of Baba's life with their spiritual significance explained. With Baba, he traveled the world over several times, drawing up itineraries and gathering the records of his master's work with untiring energy. Whilst doing his duties as one of the most trusted and dear ones of Baba, he led his life with the name of Baba on his lips. After Chanji's death, Baba once remarked, Chanji was not only my disciple, he was my friend. He always spoke of my uncle with great love. Meher Baba had beckoned to Uncle Chanji, saying, leave everything and come to me. And in heartfelt response, he spent the last 20 years of his life serving his God selflessly until the day he died. With his fearless devotion, he endured without question everything that Baba had orchestrated during his life. He considered it all Baba's grace. In the end, Chanji was rewarded by what he had almost desired to become as humble as the dust under his beloved's feet.
So that was the chapter on Dadachanji.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe another 10 minutes and then you can we can rotate the reading. Any thoughts before we go to chapter 10?
Yeah, I just remembered real obedience from the seven realities. So Chanji would obey everything what Baba would say, and absolute complete surrender. So real surrender and real obedience from the seven realities is what I comes to my mind. We can hear Kama if he has any uh, observations, comments. Kama, I think none. So I'll continue.
Yeah,
Gift
I
of
mean,
God.
it's not just that, right? So with each of the disciples and the little or more, if they have written a biography and diaries and so on, we learn so much about all the seven realities, all the personal interactions with him, and yeah, one thing that stands out is their conviction and obedience and living the Baba life rather than just, you know, to use Kama's expression, BBC. So I mean, they have nothing else other than just um, doing and pleasing Baba in every step of the way. And I think that's the point we need to get to.
Absolutely, it requires, as you said, conviction and absolute surrender, and of course, all the seven realities. But what came to my mind after reading was the obedience.
Yes, very true. I agree.
Gift of God, chapter 10. Don't worry. Worry accumulates and grows in strength. It becomes a habit long after the cause has ceased to be. Meher Baba. I had felt it necessary to suppress my own feelings in order to help my mother in her sorrow after Tempton's death. But with the loss of Uncle Chanji, my pain was so great that grief overwhelmed me, and I wrote to Baba, who was now in Aurangabad, pouring out my heart. Bombay, October 1944. My ever dearest Baba, you are the only one to understand and give relief to my aching heart. I am broken, I am all broken to pieces. Therefore, I seek refuge in writing to you. My heart seems to be crying every minute of my life. My mind seems to be losing its capacity to think or to remember. And due to that, my physical health is failing. I have no plans for the future because my heart and mind have refused to build them. The moment I begin to take interest in life, something comes in to kill it. This has been going on for years. All that I have built has been broken down. All that I want at present is to sit in a quiet corner and cry and think of you only. I want nobody, I want nothing, just thoughts of you. Let me even forget my own self. Almost immediately after I wrote this letter, Baba called Nariman and me, along with Nargis, to Aurangabad to be with him. Baba knew how deeply we were suffering, but he spoke of his own pain, asking, why do you feel for Chanji? Who is he to you? It is I who should feel for him. You have no idea what a loss he is to me. Baba's sadness over Chanji's death emphasized to us that as the avatar, he experienced everything on the human level as well as from his God state. As God, Baba felt the loss of no one, but as man, he was affected in the same ways we were. His questions also let us know that he wanted us to try to get over our sorrow. Baba then changed the subject, telling Nariman and me that he wanted our marriage to take place in 2 months and setting the date of for 21st December, 1 week before Mera's second public birthday celebration. Our hearts were heavy, knowing how much we would miss our dear uncle, who would have been the life of the occasion.
By the way, about the statement that we see here about how he operates simultaneously at the human and the divine level. What are your comments on that? So, in the sense, is one to take that he's experiencing those feelings and expressing them, or is it to be? I mean, again, but he is the faultless one, right? So, is he doing that to be counted as one of us, or to give comfort and succor to um, us, that he is also like us? So I'm just asking, I'm just commenting to what I'm reading right now. Any thoughts?
Basically, he's saying, I mean, he's a God man, but he's really living the life as an ordinary human being. I mean, just to as he's experiencing everything on the human level. I mean, it's his being he's being compassionate and he's trying to understand. He's trying to really correlate to what we all are passing through our pain. Although he himself was in pain, but he's trying to live the life of a human being. Although it's not required for him, but he's still doing it.
Yeah.
Jay,
Hello.
Uh, Kama,
You're
your
sounding you're
uh,
sounding like you're talking on a 1960s radio. Repeat what you said, Kama.
or from the space.
Yeah.
uh, speaking out, too is very bad, but
It's really bad. Your audio is really bad.
Ashok's okay.
I wish we could hear him, because I'm sure he has something interesting and important to say, but his audio is bad. So what I would suggest, Kama, is just, would you try disconnecting and reconnecting to the call, so that at least you're back in action in a minute or so. Meanwhile,
That's
we can
one.
continue.
That's
What's
one
that?
thing. Or you can put his comments on the chat also. I mean, he can disconnect and come back or put his comments in the chat because he said something. I mean, I couldn't hear anything. It
Yeah.
was all garbage. Anyway, continuing. Baba wanted our marriage performed according to Zoroastrian tradition in the hall attached to the fire temple at Ahmednagar. On 18th December, our two families and over 100 of Baba's close followers arrived in Ahmednagar for the wedding. We were immediately greeted with more sad news. Adi Senior told us Masaji had suffered a stroke the day before and died. Masaji was an elderly man, but still quite strong. Only 2 days earlier, he had gone all the way to Pune to shop for Mehra's birthday, as he was in charge of cooking for the occasion. Masaji was very dear to us, and his death cast another shadow over the wedding festivities. The day after we arrived, Baba came to Ahmednagar, where he gave darshan to all the wedding guests. The following day, he called my mother, Nariman and Nargis, and me to have his darshan in Merazad, a new residence which he had established earlier that year. Nariman stayed with the men mandali while I took all my wedding attire to show to Baba and dear Mehra. Beloved Baba touched every article of clothing and jewelry, holding my sari and my plain gold wedding ring in his hands. My joy was overflowing. Next, Baba took my mother by hand and showed her around the main bungalow, room by room. He asked her, "Do you like it here?" And mother, delighted, said, "Yes, Baba, it's so peaceful. I love it here." She was in ecstasy with Baba holding her hand for such a long time. Baba then said, "I will keep you here forever with me." When I heard his words, I wondered how it would be possible for her to stay in the ashram. She had young children to look after. My brothers were 9, 11, and 14. I thought perhaps Baba would call her to stay after the children were older and on their own.
That's the wedding photo.
Yes.
And so maybe this is the venue of the wedding, right? The hall next to the fire temple in Ahmednagar.
The following morning, Margaret Krask again helped me with my makeup just as she had for my engagement. I dressed in the white sari covered with silver stars, and Nariman and I went to the hall for the ceremony. There, a Zoroastrian priest performed both the Navjot of my brother Nozer and our marriage rites in front of our families and friends.
So if we could just pause for a minute here. Um, Tama has actually commented on the text. Baba said, I'm quoting, Baba said as an avatar, he has to become, in capital, and an ordinary human being. So he will behave like one and suffer even though he is experiencing God consciousness. Also, it's part of the divine theme or script, which is predetermined or prescripted, predestined before the avatar descends. So every event is happening according to divine plan, including Chanji's death. Of course. Thank you. Thanks, Kama.
Yeah, thanks, Kama. There is a asterisk on Navjot. You want to read that
Yeah,
first?
let's
Or
do that. Let's do that. But they missed putting the what it means. Maybe it's at the end of the book.
maybe it's the end of the book. Okay.
Yeah, Navjot is basically the thread ceremony, which is the Parsi thread ceremony.
Yeah,
So
okay.
at Kushti or that one of the two things that they start wearing. And I think it's also a religious ceremony performed by, what do they call their priests? The stool.
Okay. Adi Senior,
Yeah, that's where to start. Yes, you're right.
Adi Senior, some of the men Mandali, Pilamai, and several of the Western women came from Mehrabad. The marriage took place at 11 and a luncheon followed. Baba had told us and Nargis to come to Meherazad at 5 that evening to spend 10 days with him. About an hour before we were to leave, one of Nariman's dear aunts from Karachi, whom he had not seen for many years, started having pains in her chest. Thinking she was having a heart attack, we called a doctor, but it was a while before he arrived. We could not just go off and leave her, yet I was worried that we would arrive at Meherazad later than Baba's appointed time. Finally, the doctor arrived and examined her. Much to our relief, he said there was no cause for worry. She simply needed rest. When we got to Merazad, our hearts were anxious. Baba immediately asked, "Why did you come 10 minutes late?" We had wanted to be there promptly, but because of the unusual circumstances, we had failed to carry out his order. Baba was gentle with us, but in those days he was very firm, allowing not even a slightest variance in his orders, and I felt sad that we had not tried harder to obey him.
Again, 10 minutes of delay. Okay. And look at the pain that she is going through. I felt sad that we had not tried harder to obey him. And it was a genuine medical emergency.
Yes. Baba puts us through a lot of trial with regard to punctuality. I mean, it puts us into a dilemma. So I want to ask the question to both of you. What would you have done? Left somebody in pain and followed Baba? That is difficult practically.
Yeah, it's a very, very tough choice. And I think if there is I mean, I'm talking personally. If there is alternate help that somebody could receive other than mine, then I would put following Baba's words over that. So I would make arrangements through that alternative person and then try to stick to Baba's word. That would be my um, personal choice. Again, it's all intelligent action, right? By the
Yeah,
way, Kama is busy typing. One more message from him. Let me read that. Also, remember that ordinary human beings apparently suffer because it's not a real suffering, apparently suffer because of their false identification with their bodies. This is part of the spiritual journey, especially for spiritual aspirants and advanced spiritual aspirants. Only when one stops identifying with the body, then we are truly on the path. Of course, of course. So that's for us. And I mean, we started with Baba's dual experiences and responses at both the human and the divine level. And of course, he's continuing that to bring it down to our levels.
absolutely.
Yeah. Baba says, he continues, and I quote, Baba says, as long as you keep sincerely trying to follow Baba's awakenings, we are fine even if we have missteps. Yeah, that's just to talk about the misstep that we were speculating upon. What would one do when faced with a moral dilemma, with a day to day dilemma between a choice which is what Baba would want us to do and a choice which is more practical and drawing us in a particular direction because human behavior demands that we do that kind of a thing. So, to that, he's responded with that message, I believe. This is getting interesting. So, we have a hybrid way of joining on calls. So, we have text inputs and audio inputs at the same time.
And he wrote, hence the PWE. What are the, that mean?
Provisional working ego.
Ah, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah. So hence, yeah, he typed it in.
Yeah, he's typing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Okay, let's continue.
doctor or professor, doctor and Professor Kama.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Okay, continuing.
So I had a great time talking uh, with this with Praveen, the gentleman from Oman. We'll talk about that later. So
Okay,
when he mentions provisional working ego, we spent quite some time talking about that as well. Where okay, I mean we'll talk at just a few minutes after our mm, main session.
okay, great. Baba gave each of us a loving embrace, after which Nariman went to the men's quarters and Nargis and I were taken to the women's, where Mehra, Mani, Naja, and Mehru, Mehra's niece, were standing on the veranda to welcome us. Mehra put a tika, a mark with the red paste, in the center of my forehead before she and other women embraced me. Baba, Mehra, and Mani gave me several gifts, including a silver powder box and a vase. But the most precious was a photo of Baba and Mehra in a small silver frame. I knew that Mehra's photo had not been given to anyone before that time. I was in ecstasy. Rano Gele later told me that when she and Elizabeth took photos of Mehra, Baba would take the negatives away from them. Baba knew that Mehra's pictures would someday be all over the world, presented the first one to me. This photo marked another significant moment in my relationship with Mehra. Baba had already given me a sari that she had worn and asked me to help her dress on her birthday. And now he had given me a photograph of himself and Mehra together. We entered the hall of the main bungalow and Baba surprised me with another gift, a large photo of himself.
So here are the photos.
Yeah. So
So this must be the large photo on the left, and this must be the small photo, the first photo of Mehra that was given away.
we stayed in Merazad for 2 days. Nariman on the men's side, I on the women's, spending a honeymoon with Baba. Then from the 23rd to 28th, we were in Mehrabad with Baba, Mehra, and rest of the Mandali for Mehra's birthday celebration. Again, Nariman stayed with the men while I spent this time in Upper Mehrabad with the women. Despite our marriage and Mehra's birthday, two occasions that should have been joyous, the emphasis again fell on death. The first day in Mehrabad, we all went to Masaji's gravesite near the railway tracks. Baba had kept the grave open to a level about 3 feet below the ground, and he had Uncle Chanji's bedding rolls spread out inside. Baba sat on a chair at the head of the grave, and we gathered around him. One of the Mandali read, from a list that had been drawn up beforehand, the names of all Baba's intimate lovers who had died. As one by one the names were read, Baba threw a rose for each into the bedding roll. At the end, the bedding roll and flowers were covered with earth as the grave was closed. On 24th December, yet
So
another slab.
is there a marked grave for um, Chanji, Lower Mehrabad? I'm not sure.
We'll have to research this.
Yeah, yeah. But of course, I've come across this bedroll incident. But why I asked that question is obviously there are others that Baba is also mourning the departure of, and though there is a symbolic gesture of, you know, putting this bedding roll and marking, I mean, closing the grave. I don't know if this is a marked grave of one person alone. So is it, or is it the place of the tower? Because there was also talk of that, right? I don't know. I may be wrong. I think this is the place of the tower. if I'm right, if which I have read elsewhere. You know the tower, right?
Yes, yes. Even I was thinking of the tower, which was opened, I think, two years ago or 3 years ago.
Correct, correct. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
On 24th December, yet another and sad and unexpected event occurred. Baba's sister-in-law, Gulu, Adi Jr.'s wife, was in critical condition after giving birth to their son, Dara. Word was sent to Baba, and it was Gulu's fortune that he arrived while she was alive. Before leaving her bedside, Baba gently closed her eyes, and moments later, Gulu breathed her last. That evening, the funeral was held in Ahmednagar, while at the same time, a Qawwali program was held at Lower Mehrabad. Although Baba did not tell us of Gulu's death, as he did not want Mehra to feel sad, Philamai told me and some of the others.
Yeah,
Mehra,
if I can pause you for two things. One, I would like to confirm that yes, the foundation of the tower was laid on the tomb of dearest Masaji and on the bedding of one of the beloved disciples, which is Chanji. So basically, we are both our points were right, Ashok. I'm just confirming that point number one. Point number two. Kama, do you remember our connection with Gulu and Uti, rather Kunur, you and me with in the car? Okay, so something else
Yeah,
Kama has said.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I was just reminded of that. Anyway, he said something else which I'll read. Also, the avatar only uses his infinite knowledge as God in human form, while he doesn't use his infinite power and bliss of Satchitanand when in Saguna Sakar form. Yes, correct. Very important distinction. He does not use power and bliss, infinite power and bliss specifically, and only uses infinite knowledge in the human form. Hence, the avatar behaves like an ordinary human being and undergoes emotions and also actually suffers. Uh, in contradistinction with uh, a perfect master. A perfect master is only acting. That is, he does not even he does not actually have anything to do with human emotions and human frailties after he reaches the exalted position of the perfect master. Till then, he is a human. I mean, I mean, just to make it clear. But in the case of Avatar, like Kama points out, that's how it is. Yeah. So in fact, if you can read from the beginning of this paragraph, it might be good. And maybe very soon I'll continue with the reading, Ashokji.
I'm fine. Whenever you
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. So we actually ran into I'm trying to think. I wish Kama could help me here. I think it is uh Gulu's sister or cousin whom we met in Kunur of all the places, and we actually gate crashed. We gate crashed into their house and spoke, and we were not. I mean, we were not booked for trespass and thrown out, but unusually, like things happen with Kama all the time. It turned out that he had already spoken to the son-in-law of the lady of the house, which as I said is I think Gulu's a cousin or own sister, biological sister. He had already met and spoken to the son-in-law of that household, and then he also was invited over for tea later, and they had a great Baba time. Yeah, she's the cousin of Dara. Okay. She's a cousin of Dara. So it's not, it's Gulu's niece,
He wrote also the daughter of Sarosh.
Sarosh. Yeah. Okay. Let's continue.
Yeah, okay.
Or actually, I can take over. No problem.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Thank you so much for reading. Let me continue.
It's
Uh,
a pleasure. It's a pleasure to read anything related to Baba.
Yes, indeed. So let me start from this point on. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. On 24th December, yet another sad and unexpected event occurred. Baba's sister-in-law, Gulu, Adi Jr.'s wife, was in critical condition after giving birth to their son, Dara. Word was sent to Baba, and it was Gulu's fortune that he arrived while she was still alive. Before leaving her bedside, Baba gently closed her eyes, and moments later, Gulu breathed her last. That evening, the funeral was held in Ahmednagar, while at the same time, a Qawwali program was held at Lower Maharabad. Although Baba did not tell us of Gulu's death, as he did not want Mehra to feel sad, Pilamai told me and some of the others. Mehra and the rest of the women mandali came down the hill to attend the program, which they heard from behind the curtain. It is the Zoroastrian custom not to play music for up to a year after the death of a close relative. However, Baba carried on with the program that evening. He was showing us emphatically that death does not have to be a time for mourning if we understand that it is nothing more than a transition between lives. And there are a few messages that I have to read. Her daughter was married to the industrialist who was running the Baba Children's Home, and that was in Coimbatore. It was something Smile Foundation, something like that. And he had told me about this interaction that he had with this NGO, and he was actually concerned that they were not as responsive as he would have liked. He picked that place because it had the name Meher in the NGO of all places in Coimbatore. Okay, it was a children's home in Coimbatore with the name Meher. So he just picked up Google, found the number, called them, and obviously because he came, it was a cold call. They were probably less uh, responsive, right? Oh, okay. So he further adds the lady who died and that we are reading now is Sarosh's wife. Sarosh so is Baba's brother, I think. And we are talking about Dara at the same time. Yeah, I mean it was just unbelievable. I think the name we saw a sign on the uh, by the gate of the house in big bold letters saying Meher, and we said, hey, we can't leave this um, um, untested or pursued. So we pursued by actually doing a cold call. I think, to be honest, that we rang the bell and all we heard was dogs for a few minutes, and then finally somebody came up, and that's how it went. But me and Kama have had some fun adventures together, Baba adventures, I should say. So friend Joel's father put me in touch with the industrialist. Joel is a Baba lover. Yeah, yeah, from Coimbatore, and we are staying at a club. Okay. He's just giving more details about the contact we made prior to going to Kunur with that NGO. I did not make that contact, but he had on a prior visit. And yeah, Joel is a lovely Baba lover who lives in Coimbatore. Okay, let's continue. Despite all these sad events, I remember one particularly happy moment. Mehra was very pleased when I gave her a pink sari with a silver embroidered border. I had bought it for my trousseau, but decided to give it to her instead. She said, where can I wear such a sari? It's so gorgeous. Baba just smiled and turning to her said, you wear it on your birthday, then give it back to Arnawaz and she'll wear it. On the evening of her birthday, Baba called me into her room and once again told me to help Mehra put on her sari. When all the women guests had gathered in the shade under the tin roof in Upper Mehrabad for Baba's darshan and dinner, Baba and Mehra came out and Baba said, doesn't Mehra look beautiful? And she did indeed look lovely, a vision of purity in the pink sari. She was wearing a new gold necklace that Nariman and I had ordered for her birthday, engraved with two words that described her perfectly: Baba's love. This time with Mehrab provided a moment of quiet joy in those 10 tumultuous days, during which I felt as though I were in a dream. So many life changing events had taken place in such a short time that I felt dazed. Baba wanted Nariman and me to stay in Ahmednagar for a month to be near him, but Nariman's aunt from Karachi pleaded with him to come to Bombay and be with their family. Despite the fact that we knew what Baba wanted, we asked if we could go for a couple of days and then return. Although he agreed to let us go, I then had misgivings and wondered why we had so thoughtlessly asked Baba's permission to leave. This time, our worldly attachment to our dear ones overshadowed our desire to please him. But we learned from our mistake. When we returned to Ahmednagar, we stayed in a guest house for about 3 weeks, going almost every day to Mehrazad for Baba's darshan. All the recent events had been a great strain on me. My health was deteriorating, and I felt quite weak. Then I began to feel as though I were dying, and no matter how much I tried to tell myself that I was not, I'll repeat. Then I began to feel as though I were dying, and no matter how much I tried to tell myself that I was not, the feeling persisted. I was just beginning my life with Nariman, and I was confused. Baba was very concerned about my condition, and 2 weeks later, he told us to come stay at Mehrazad. Even then, this feeling of impending death did not go away. Although Baba made me understand that it was important for me to go through this experience, he kept us with him for a week, looking after me with great care and tenderness. While Baba allows us to go through extremely difficult experiences, his loving hands always take care of us physically, mentally, and emotionally. Baba extended our stay for yet another week, and when I felt better, he sent us back to Bombay. Whoa, there's quite a bit of text input. Let me read out. Oh, so, okay. He confirms that it is not Sarosh's wife. It is Sarosh's wife's sister who died. Sarosh's wife breastfed Dara, her sister's son, along with her own newborn daughter, who is the younger sister of the lady we met in Kunur. So let me say that again. Yeah, that much I recollect. But thank you for all the context. So I'll repeat. Uh, Sarosh's wife breastfed Dara along with her uh, own newborn daughter. They were of the same age. And Dara grew up in Sarosh's house along with that daughter, right? Uh, and that that person's younger sister is married to a very famous doctor who is actually he's a record breaking and very famous doctor who has won many awards, who lives in Kunur, and I think lived to be in late in his 80s and so on. And that's the house we went to. And that daughter and that family basically runs NGO as well. Uh, Kunur is uphill from Coimbatore. I mean, it's the nearest big railhead and town is Coimbatore. So in Coimbatore, they run this NGO, and I think they have business interests as well in the town. And they live in the family residence, beautiful place in Kunur. So much for that uh, Kunur episode that me and Kama were jointly involved in. Okay, but at home, I continue reading. But at home, other problems were beginning. On our wedding day, my mother had fallen flat on her chest. She soon discovered a lump in her breast, but she did not pay much attention to it, nor did she tell anyone else until it had grown quite large. Finally, in April, she became worried and asked Gohar to examine her. Gohar was very concerned and immediately took my mother to a specialist at a large new cancer hospital in Bombay. The doctor ordered immediate surgery, and the operation revealed an advanced stage of cancer. It had been only 4 months since we had gone to Ahmednagar for our marriage, and we found it hard to believe all that had happened in that time. If we recollect, Baba had said, you'll see a lot of death. And if you see, not just there are two deaths that are described here, but also this feeling of death and fear of death that she seemed to have in the early days of the marriage. And I know that can be very disturbing for anyone. Nariman's mother wanted us to live with her, but Baba had specifically told Nariman and me that we should find a separate apartment. In 1945, with the war still on, it was virtually impossible to find an apartment or even a room. Hospitals, bungalows, and houses had been requisitioned for military use. Many of my friends had postponed marrying because of the housing shortage. When they asked where Nariman and I were going to live, I tell them we were searching for an apartment. They would smile as though I were joking because Nariman was working and I was occupied with caring for my mother. We hired an agent and left the matter in his hands. I knew we would find an apartment as Baba would not have told us to move without providing a place for us to live. The agent we had hired could find only two flats to show us, and they were both unsuitable. Then in May, a few weeks after my mother's operation, a friend of Nariman's approached him saying he knew of an apartment that was for lease. The two of them went to see the place, and without consulting me, Nariman signed the exchange deed. In the evening, when he returned from the office, he told me, Arnawaz, I have a surprise. I found an apartment for us today and rented it immediately. I didn't phone you because I was afraid if we even waited an hour, we might lose it. I know you will definitely like it. The next morning, we were off to see the apartment located opposite the American consulate. The name on the front of the building was Ashiana, which means nest. The apartment was fully furnished, something very rare, even down to curtains, crockery, telephone, and refrigerator, so that all we had to do was move in with our suitcases. There was even a garage for our car. The Maharaja of Gwalior had used the apartment to house his English jockey who came to Bombay during the 4 month racing season each year. The lease was held by rich friends of the Maharaja, the best jewelers in Bombay, who had been asked to order the furniture and accessories and see to the decor. The furniture was of the best quality, made from Burma teakwood, and the matching upholstery and silk curtains were in excellent taste. The jewelers asked only for the expenses that they had incurred for furnishings and decoration, as they were not interested in making a profit. We could not have asked for better. I had never dreamed we would find such a beautiful place to live. At the time of our marriage, we had ordered a bedroom set, and the furniture company had been calling us to take delivery. But until we found an apartment, we had no place to put it. Our new apartment had one empty room. Baba had even provided us with the space in which to put our new beds, cupboard, and a dressing table. Seeing to every detail, he had given this apartment to us on a golden platter. By Baba's grace, we moved in to our nest. At the end of the war, Baba sent most of the Western women back to Europe or the United States, and Margaret Krask, who stayed at Ashiana while awaiting passage on a ship to England, was our first guest. Nariman and I both greatly enjoyed Margaret's company, and I have many fond memories of our time with her. India was still under British rule, and she and Nariman teased one another constantly about the likelihood of independence for India. Baba had given me an order not to give Margaret anything, but I was concerned that she had no clothing suitable for the cold English winter she would be facing. At that time, many British families wanting to return home were selling their clothing and household goods for very little money. For just a few rupees, I found two dresses that knew would fit Margaret, a long sleeved heavy woolen one and a lovely beaded evening dress. By selling them to her at the same price I had paid for them, I was able to keep Baba's order and still provide her with some appropriate clothing. Margaret's visit proved to be a delightful, bright moment during a time otherwise overshadowed by my mother's illness. A beautiful example of obedience just sneaked in upon us, right? So, in the last page, I was thinking, hey, Baba said, don't give her anything. Why is she going shopping? And then she does intelligent action. So she basically takes money for it, which these are the things that we encounter only through going through our Saturday reads, right? It's either through the Saturday reads. I mean, especially if it's got to do with Mandali and that period, it's only through the written word that we get these accounts. Otherwise, of course, we have live stories that we keep encountering about Baba and his stories. But um, I think for us, the most important part is to take away the right message each time. Yeah. Okay, I'll pause for a minute if either of you has any comments.
Can we hear Kama? If you can try again.
Kama, he's missing your voice. Maybe Kama's not in a position to talk right now.
Oh,
No, so
okay.
let's continue. Chapter 11. Neither seek death nor fear it. And when death comes to you, it is converted into a stepping stone to the higher life. I repeat, neither seek death nor fear it. And when death comes to you, it is converted into a stepping stone to the higher life. Meher Baba. So every chapter has a quote that precedes the actual text. It was evident that Nariman, who had been working continuously for nearly 5 years developing his business, needed a rest, and we had planned a vacation to Kashmir for August of 1946. Nariman thought that I needed a break as well, but because of my mother's declining health, I felt very torn about going. When Nariman saw Baba in April, he said, Bachamai will die within 5 months. Though Nariman did not tell me, I came to know through someone else. Not telling Nariman, I knew I silently resigned myself to beloved Baba's will and decided to go to Kashmir for Nariman's sake. Fortunately, Dr. Alu, who was by then like one of our family, agreed to look after mother while we were away, knowing that she would be well cared for, relieving some of my turmoil about leaving. And then, through an interesting set of circumstances involving Dr. Alu and a visit to a saint called Hira Baba, all anxiety was lifted from my heart. It has been a custom in India for people to visit saints, as Baba had not yet given the order to his lovers to stay away from any other saints or gurus. Many were still visiting them. I personally was never attracted to anyone but Baba, and I had my doubts concerning the authenticity of some of the saints that others went to see. However, when Baba himself sent Chanji to Sadgurus and saints, Chanji would often take members of our family along with him. We were given to understand that coming into contact with these holy men was beneficial to us. Upasni Maharaj, one of the five perfect masters at the time, visited Bombay frequently, and my family and I would go with Chanji for his darshan. Also in 1943, Nariman, Nargis, and I went to see Narayan Maharaj, another of the perfect masters who had come to Bombay. When I told him that our uncle was staying in Baba's ashram, Maharaj said, I have heard Meher Baba is keeping silence. Why is he keeping silence? Maharaj, I replied, you know. He then responded, why don't you make him speak with the intensity of your love? At the time, I thought he meant literally to try to make Baba speak aloud. I later understood the true meaning of his words. Baba responds to our love by speaking to us internally. Just before our trip to Kashmir, I went with Alu to visit Hira Baba. She had been going to see him frequently, and he would give her errands to do. So it's a lady doctor called Alu. So it's maybe Alu and not Alu, I don't know. When Alu spoke to him of Meher Baba, he always lovingly praised Meher Baba. Although I was impressed with Alu's stories of Hira Baba, I felt uncomfortable about her growing involvement with him and discouraged her visits. I knew how much Alu loved Meher Baba, so I encouraged her to think only of him. Alu understood my concern and agreed to stop going to Hira Baba, but she wanted to see him one last time and take her leave properly. She asked me to accompany her on this last visit, so I did. We sat before Hira Baba for some time, and I was convinced of his sincerity. When we were about to leave, Alu told him that she would not be coming back, and then, to my surprise, mentioned that I was going to Kashmir. Alu knew that while I had made the decision to go, I still felt very uneasy about the trip. She did not say a word about my mother's critical condition, but Hira Baba looked at me and said, "Daughter, go to Kashmir. God will take care of you. He will not let anything happen while you are away." I felt that this message had come from Meher Baba, that he had spoken through Hira Baba to calm me and give me the strength to leave despite my mother's impending death. Then, just before we left for Kashmir, I had two unpleasant confrontations with people who wanted to use occult powers to heal my mother. Mother was good hearted, but rather childlike and spiritually naive, and these qualities worked both for and against her. She had tremendous faith in Baba, but she also sometimes put her trust in those who were not worthy of it. The first incident had to do with a man named Savak, who claimed to be spiritually advanced. This man, this man used occult powers to help people with problems concerning their health, financial affairs, and personal matters. When I was only a child, Savak had met my mother through some of her relatives. Quickly recognizing her naive, trusting nature, he began coming around to our home and offering suggestions that would supposedly help her and the family. Even though mother had complete faith in Baba, she would listen to Savak's suggestions, often carrying them out, thinking they would be beneficial. She believed that all those who presented themselves as holy men were good, not realizing that some used occult powers simply to gain control over others and earn money. It would never have occurred to her that someone might actually harm others in pursuit of his own greed. Even when Savak first came to visit my mother, I felt revulsion toward him. This feeling kept me from getting entangled with him or others of his kind, and I thank Baba for that. This self appointed holy man had already tried to heal someone in my family by occult means back in 1934. Soon, soon after we moved to Bowman Lodge. At the age of 9 months, my fourth and youngest brother, Nozer, had become critically ill and was near death. Savak visited my mother and proclaimed that he could save Nozer from this illness. He instructed mother to tie a red string around Nozer's bedpost, and after she had, my brother's condition did improve. Savak then told mother that he wanted to show Meher Baba how he had saved Nozer's life, but I thought his words sounded like an arrogant challenge. On his next visit, Baba saw the red string tied to the bedpost and demanded to know why it was there. My mother explained what had happened, telling Baba that Savak wanted to come and see him. Baba ordered that the string be removed immediately and told her to send for Savak. When Savak walked in, I could see that he was about to call Baba's attention to the red string, but then realized that it was no longer there. My mother quickly explained that it had been removed by Baba's order. Savak glared at Baba. I turned and saw that Baba's face was expressionless, impervious to the man's insolence. I don't know exactly what was taking place at that moment, but I felt the eloquence of Baba's silence. Throughout the years that followed, Savak had continued to visit my mother occasionally. Right before we left for Kashmir, he came to say that he wanted to take her to Ajmer in central India to be cured at the tomb of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, who Baba said was a perfect master. Mother's suffering was so intense that she was unable to think clearly, and she became even more confused by Savak's suggestion. Mother was only 48 years old, and she had three young sons to look after. When she asked me what I thought she should do, I gently told her that we had to place our faith in Baba alone and to surrender to his will. After listening to my words, mother seemed relieved, accepting that her fate lay completely in beloved Baba's hands. The second incident with the occult involved one of my mother's friends. This woman loved Baba. However, in a desperate attempt to save her husband's life, she had become involved in the occult and continued meddling in it even after her husband survived. She claimed she was hearing Chanji's voice saying, "Save my bacha." Bacha is the, oh, say my bacha. Bacha is the short form of my mother's name, Bacha Mai. Certain that she could save my mother, this woman asked another Baba lover to bring my mother to her. When the second woman called me and narrated the whole story, I said firmly, "Look, whether my mother lives or dies, Meher Baba is the only one for us. He knows what is best. If Baba wants my mother to live, she will live. If he wants her to die, she will die. We don't want any interference from anybody. I am not going to take my mother to her, and so don't even mention this to her. We have the highest of the high, and he knows what is best for each of us. Why would we turn to anyone else?" Baba himself revealed to his lovers the identity of the five true perfect masters of the time, and on occasion had even directed people to visit them. Later, however, after all five had died, he had given an order that those who followed him were no longer to seek contact with any other masters. In 1948, while Baba was in Madras, several of his lovers from Bombay who had accompanied him there asked if they could pay their respects at the tomb of Ramana Maharshi, whom Baba had said was God realized. Baba told all those present, "Once you come to me, you must not go anywhere else." From that day onwards, beloved Baba gave repeated warnings to his lovers not to visit other masters, saints, or gurus, and to stay away from the occult. Many years later, Baba asked me, "Do you know the story of Milarepa?" When I said that I didn't, Baba told Mehra and Mani to tell me the whole story that night after he retired. On my next visit to Mehrazad, Baba asked, "Did you read Milarepa?" Although I had found the book at home, I hadn't read it, and I didn't realize until that moment that Baba wanted me to read it. When I returned to Bombay, I immediately read Tibet's great yogi Milarepa. Milarepa had used the occult to gain revenge upon his aunt who had destroyed his family. Finally, becoming disgusted with the emptiness of his bitter feelings, he turned from his practice of occult powers to seek God. Milarepa went through terrible suffering in undertaking the task given to him by the master who agreed to take him as a disciple. Baba told me that Milarepa did attain God realization, but he wanted me to read the story as an example of how hard one has to struggle and suffer to undo the damage done to the soul through occult powers. In 1958, Meher Baba circulated a small booklet entitled Warning, followed by other later circulars. In his 1966 warning, Baba said, "Shun those masters who are like multicolored electric signs that flash on and off, brightening the dark sky of your world and leaving you in darkness again." Despite Baba's warnings, however, even today some of his lovers insist on seeking help through using the occult or consulting other masters. These are very dangerous practices. Baba emphatically told those who love him, "Just hold on to my daman. Leave everything to me." Leaving my mother in Baba's hands, Nariman and I departed for Kashmir. When we arrived in Srinagar, Dr. Daulat Singh, one of the Mandali who later joined Baba in the new life, came to greet us at our hotel. He told us that Baba had sent him a marble slab with Uncle Chanji's epitaph engraved on it, with a letter telling him to keep it until Baba gave him further instructions. The marble had been with Daulat Singh for nearly a year, and only 2 days earlier, he had received a second letter from Baba telling him that it should now be placed on Chanji's grave. So that sets the record clear. Chanji's grave is not in Mehrabad, but is in um, Kashmir. Naraman and I knew that beloved Baba had waited for the two of us who loved Chandji so much to be in Srinagar to place the marker on his grave. We chose 25th of August, the second anniversary of Chandji's death, to go to Badami Bagh, a small tranquil cemetery near the mountains with a lovely garden full of colorful flowers. As we stood by his grave, I recalled Uncle Chandji's sadness at the train station the last time I saw him. Then I remembered that long before the day he had said with a smile on his face that he would die in Kashmir. We returned to Bombay on 1st September, and mother died 1 month later. During her last weeks, she suffered excruciating pain as the cancer had spread all over her body. Baba constantly inquired about her health, comforting not only mother but the rest of us as well. We watched helplessly, unable to do much to ease her pain. Suddenly, 3 days before she died, she became very peaceful, and I felt that she was no longer suffering physically. Smiling and pointing to different places in the room, she would ask, "Oh, do you see Baba standing there?" Or she would say, "Baba is here. He is at my bedside." Seeing that Baba was giving her relief, we shared in her happiness. The following day, however, she stopped seeing Baba and apparently experienced a terrible void, the agony of not seeing him. She constantly urged us to send a telegram to Baba and tell him to come back, pleading, "Call Baba, call Baba." She would ask us, "Why has he disappeared?" This emotional pain went on for the whole day and was even worse than her physical suffering because there was absolutely nothing we could do to help. Trying to comfort her, I would say, "Mother, I've just sent a telegram to Baba," but that would satisfy her for barely 5 minutes. She would want to know why Baba hadn't replied, imploring me to send a second telegram. "Why don't you beseech Baba to come to me?" she would ask. "But why don't you plead with him to come to me?" The third day, she became very quiet, so weak she could not even lift her hand, and we had to put an ear to her mouth to hear her feeble voice. Her life was ebbing away. That night, exhausted, I felt asleep by her bed. At midnight, hearing her voice shout "Baba," I woke with a start, but my mother was fast asleep. Alert now, I sat by her side. At about 4 in the morning, she began taking Baba's name, her voice no longer weak. She repeated "Baba, Baba" with such force that my whole body tingled. Her eyes were open, yet she saw nothing. The family was very quiet during these final intense moments with my mother. Half an hour before she died, I awakened my brothers. I had them sit next to her and told them, "Keep taking Baba's name as mother is dying." My father held Baba's photo in front of her to see, but it was clear that she was not aware of it or our presence. She went on calling aloud to Baba for 45 minutes. Then she lay quietly, and at 5, she slipped away. She had done what Baba had always told us to do: "Take my name when you breathe your last." 2 hours later, my father broke down, and I allowed him to cry for a few minutes before gently telling him that if he wept, the rest of the family would also. Begging him to hold his tears, I said, "Mother has gone to Baba and she's happy. We have to think of her happiness." I told my brothers to imagine that mother was in a beautiful garden with Baba at her side, showering his love on her. So that must be the parents Pachamai, and Nauroji. Baba explained that until the soul severs its connection with the gross world, it feels the grief of the close ones who have been left behind and is hindered by it, whereas positive thoughts and feelings help the soul in its transition. Therefore, when one is grieving, it is beneficial to think of scenes like the one I told you, my brothers, to imagine. The severance of the soul from the earthly life takes 4 days, and Baba described that time as being analogous to time spent in a waiting room until the next part of a journey begins. He likened dying to the removing of an old coat. When it gets worn out, the time comes to discard it. Experiencing the death of a loved one brings us closer to detachment as it tests the degree to which we have surrendered to Baba, who truly gives us strength and courage. After mother's death, Baba sent us a telegram saying, Bacha Mai, eternally happy. During mother's funeral, everyone was calm. None of us shed a tear, even though this was the third death of someone close to our hearts in 3 years. We were beginning to understand that death is only a transition in the journey of the soul. 6 months after my mother died, Baba called my sister Rhoda, Nariman, and me to Satara for what turned out to be the first of several much happier occasions. Shortly after our arrival, Baba unexpectedly said to Rhoda, I want you to get married. Have you got any boy in mind? I was surprised to hear Rhoda mention the name of Jim Mistry, a young man who lived next door to my parents' home in Dada. Although Rhoda and Jim had never been introduced, they had been aware of one another for some time. It turned out that one of Jim's sisters knew Rhoda's best friend, and the two of them had, without our knowledge, already arranged for Rhoda and Jim to meet. The friendship developed quickly, and Jim soon asked Rhoda to marry him. When Baba called Nariman and me to Satara again a few months later, he asked about Rhoda and Jim, and I told him that Jim had proposed marriage. Baba happily gave his consent, then said that he wanted them to become engaged in December the following month, and he left all the arrangements to me. Rhoda was very nervous about the prospect of telling Jim that the engagement had to be the following month, as in India, it is not the custom for an engagement to take place so quickly. Furthermore, the arrangements are usually decided upon by the families. When she and Jim met with me to discuss the matter, we chatted about one thing and another before I told him we were followers of Meher Baba. He said he knew that, and he clearly remembered having seen Baba at the Dadar railway station with our uncle Chanji about 10 years earlier. In order to convince Jim that the engagement should take place at the time Baba had specified, I used my father as an excuse, saying that he was going away to do some work for Baba. Although he would actually be gone for only a couple of weeks, I let Jim think it might be several months and told him that my father wouldn't think it proper for Rhoda to continue going about with a man she was not engaged to during his absence. Somehow, Jim managed to convince his family to accept this idea. The engagement was a very simple affair, with the two of them exchanging rings in the presence of our two families. A few months later, Baba presented me with another challenge. He told me in May that he wanted Jim and Rhoda to be married in August. I told Rhoda, who again became quite nervous, but Baba had worked everything out for the engagement, and I knew he would do the same for the marriage. This time, the reason I used for the early date was the fact that our brother Tempton had died on 2nd August, and we wanted the marriage to be on that day. It is believed auspicious for a wedding to take place on the anniversary of a death. Somehow, with Baba's help, the family again agreed to the August date, even though they had only 2 months to prepare for the wedding. Rhoda and Jim were married and came straight from their honeymoon to the inauguration of Baba's new bungalow at Mehrazad. Despite the fact that Jim was a newcomer, Baba allowed him to stay with his intimate followers at Mehrabad. Jim took to Baba immediately and over the next few years came to love him very much. When Rhoda and Jim's first son was born a year later, Baba was staying with us at Ashiana, and he told Rhoda to bring the baby directly from the hospital to him before going home. As Baba held the week-old baby in his arms, I could see the joy in his eyes. Baba told Rhoda to name the baby Mirwan, his own given name. 2 years later, Baba named their second son. He sent a message by telephone saying, "With great love, name this child from Rose." And 2 years later, Sarosh, the third son, was also named by Baba. Although we had suffered the pain of loss, we also experienced great happiness when Baba blessed us with these three delightful additions to our family. Avtar Meher Baba ki jai. So that brings us to the close of chapter 11. We shall continue from that point on. Any comments before we stop reading, stop the session? Okay, so I will stop recording. Thanks for joining, but stay on, guys, if you're free. Yeah, so